Hello, dear ones. Father Peter John coming to you from South Bloomington, Indiana. Christ is in our midst. Hope and pray that you are all well and healthy. I want to continue on this theme that we've been doing here for the last week or so of saints who loved and cared for the poor. The saint that I'm going to talk about today, you probably associate with the liturgy that we use during Great Lent. Saint Basil the Great, Archbishop of Caesarea. He's one of the three Cappadocian fathers. He is someone who is known for his homiletics, his writing, his theology, for combating Arianism. He's known for a lot of things, and one of the most important things that he did in his life, really, was his care for the poor and the less fortunate, for the downtrodden, for the orphans and the widows. St. Basil was a monk, and he had a model of monasticism that he's one of the fathers of monasticism, communal monasticism. And in his model of monasticism, there was always an element of charity, of working to take care of those who are in need. And he actually had arguably the first hospital in history. They called it the Basiliad, and St. Gregory Nazianzen, in his funeral homily at St. Basil the Great's funeral — St. Basil died, by the way, when he was 49 years old. He worked himself to death. He worked so hard taking care of others. He was in this funeral homily, we hear all about this city outside the city, and the city that he is referring to is this Basiliad. Now, why does he say this? Well, you see, up until this time, I mean, think about the scriptures, hearing the reading of the scriptures, the New Testament and the Old Testament alike. When you hear about, for example, lepers at the gate, lepers being separated from the people. Nobody wanted to touch the lepers. They didn't want to pick up the leprosy, which was very contagious in various forms. And so the lepers just kind of had to stay on their own. And what St. Basil the Great did was he built a facility. And it was, the facility had a chapel, and it had rooms, and then there was this hospital. I mean, I wish we knew what it looked like. Maybe somebody out there has seen an ancient floor plan of it. But in any case, it was designed to take care of those who were suffering and sick so that they didn't have to be out by themselves. I mean, part of the worst part, one of the worst parts of illness, especially chronic illness like leprosy, something that doesn't heal quickly, but it takes time and sometimes ends in fatality. One of the worst parts of that is the isolation and the loneliness. Many of us have felt isolation and loneliness during the whole coronavirus shutdown. And we know that more than anything, sometimes we just want to see people, and we want to be able to talk to people face to face. And it can be a very lonely experience to be separated. And so St. Basil knew this. He knew that part of the human condition in illness is this separation and the despondency or depression that can come with it. And St. Basil, as a theologian, also knows and knew that we were created for community. We talk about being created in the image and likeness of God. Well, God is perfect community. Father, Son, Holy Spirit, three persons, one God. And so there is that unity and harmony of community within the Godhead itself. And so we talk about being made in God's image and likeness. And so when God created man, he said it's not good for man to be alone. So God created woman, and the two became a community, a common unity. And we've been living that way ever since. And so St. Basil, this great contribution of his to society, beginning back then, but then continuing through history to our present day, was this idea of housing the infirm and caring for them together in one place, and so that they could have this sense of not being ostracized or alone, but that they could have a sense of, even though they were broken and sick and in need of serious medical care, right, that they weren't alone. They were able to have people there to care for them. And so St. Basil had physicians in-house and others who helped to care for the sick. So that is just a very small, very minute part of St. Basil's story, and of his life and of his legacy, which is a great legacy, and we'll spend more time on him in the future. But that's just one very important part that all of us should know, that St. Basil contributed to human history, this idea of the hospital. And the first hospital was run by the Orthodox Christian Church with the great help from the early monastics, the monks who were under St. Basil the Great. O Lord, through the prayers of St. Basil the Great, grant us also a heart for those who are in need of care. Christ is in our midst. He is and ever shall be.